afternoon. My name is Thomas Kelly, Director of Retention, and this is Welcome to Worcester State. Welcome to Worcester State is an online web show where each week we talk about important topics that are part of a new student's transition to Worcester State. This week I'm extremely excited to be joined by Assistant Dean of Student Affairs and Director of Student Accessibility Services, Fran Minacchio. Fran, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
So can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and Student Accessibility Services here at Worcester State?
Sure. First of all, welcome to all the incoming students. We're thrilled that you're on your way to Worcester State, and I hope that I can share some information on this Woo Wednesday to help your transition. Student Accessibility Services is the office on campus that supports and provides services for students who self-identify as having a disability. That can include a wide range of medical conditions, mental health issues, learning challenges, temporary situations, as well as sensory issues like hearing or visual impairments.
Great. So you kind of already just kind of talked about what exactly is Student Accessibility Services. So what is the process in order to determine if a student is eligible for reasonable accommodations?
Sure. So first, TK, I want to encourage all students who may have had support during their kindergarten through grade 12, whether it was formal support or informal support, to please come and check us out because the reasonable accommodation process in college is really different than it is grades K through 12. So the process of requesting accommodations in college is self-identification. So students need to contact our office, and they can do that by phone 508-929-8733, by email sas@worcester.edu, or stop by our office, room 131 in the administration building. We need to hear from students because when you're a college student, you're considered an adult. So students have to self-identify, and then we have some documentation that we need from a qualified professional. It may be a medical doctor, it might be a therapist, it might be some other qualified professional that can validate the student's particular disability or challenge. For incoming students, we would love to see you during the summer, before the beginning of the semester, so we can get the reasonable accommodations, if you qualify, in place before the start of the semester. I know some of you may be in a mindset where you've had some support previously and you might want to do it all on your own, and we certainly respect that and appreciate that. But just to give you a safety net, it would be really wise to come see us and get to know our support and services over the summer.
Great. So what sort of services and support is available here at Worcester State for students?
So depending on a student's, the nature of their disability or condition, there may be a range of services available. Typically, we go through that process. It's an interactive intake process to determine if someone is eligible for services. Most frequently, students are requesting educational accommodations, and that includes accommodations such as extra time for tests or alternative test location, or for some students, alternative format textbooks. So those are services, those are accommodations that apply to the classroom and testing situations. We also offer housing accommodations through our office in conjunction with Residence Life, and some other collaborations across campus regarding physical barriers and accessibility, such as classroom furniture.
Great.
Okay.
So if a student had an IEP or a 504 plan previous to Worcester State, how would that apply to Worcester State?
So there's two answers, yes and no. So I'm going to start with the no. Your IEP or 504 plan, IEP, Individual Educational Program, does not transfer to college. College is a fresh start. We have different federal laws that apply to educational accommodations, And so if you had an IEP or a 504, we definitely want that part of your documentation that we review for an intake process. But we do not take your accommodations from a 504 or IEP and bring them into the college environment.
Sure.
College is a competitive process, and once you're admitted to Worcester State, no matter what the nature of your disability or disabilities or conditions are, you're expected to achieve the learning outcomes of every class, the same as every other student in the class. So every student's expected to follow the syllabus. And there's no adjustments in academics in terms of the amount of work and the caliber of work to achieve college level grades. Sometimes in high school, there's adjustments to the curriculum for students who may have some learning challenges or otherwise. So that's an important difference. The other is that in college, you have to self-identify. So in high school, students are often identified by their parents, guardians, or teachers. And so part of what we do in our office is also self-advocacy. So we want to see those IEP or 504 plans, but please keep in mind they do not automatically transfer to the college environment.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about what the review process for a reasonable accommodation is?
Sure. So the review process takes some time. So this is not an immediate, this isn't a 24-hour process. We have, it's not necessarily a quick turnaround. We want to do a review process in a timely manner, but it's not going to be necessarily in 48 hours or a week.
Sure.
So what happens is that a student will meet with one of our professional staff, myself, Sharon DeClerc, our assistant director, or Kelly McGill, our learning specialist, for a one-on-one interview once we have your documentation on file. That intake is about 1 hour.
Sure.
And then the three of us meet on a weekly basis to review all of our new intakes and come to some agreement about reasonable accommodations.
Sure.
Not every student's request for reasonable accommodations is automatically granted. We have some criteria we need to follow to determine that a student actually has a disability that is in line with reasonable accommodations.
Sure. Can you talk a little bit about the reasonable accommodation process for housing specifically?
Sure. So regarding educational accommodations, that's done within our office. Sharon, Kelly, and I review those requests. Housing accommodations is a housing-based accommodations committee, which is comprised of Res Life, administrative staff, the Director of Health Services, and the Director of Counseling, and representatives from our office. Students who have a documented disability may request housing accommodations. It could be for a room that has accessibility features. It could be for a first floor room because of some condition. It could be for a room that has strobes for students who are hearing impaired, and on occasions for a single based on certain kinds of conditions. That also involves an application process for the student and qualified professional documentation. Those forms are up on our website.
Great.
And then the housing-based committee, accommodations committee, meets on at least a quarterly basis to review those requests. And again, there's a review process. The committee reviews the documentation and the student's requests, and a determination is made.
Great.
Again, just like educational accommodations, not everyone who requests an accommodation will be granted because not all requests meet the criteria for reasonable. Housing accommodations are based on a need, not a want. So while some students might want to have a single room, they may not meet the criteria for a need.
Sure. Great. Thank you. So that seems those are all of our questions. Is there any other things that you want to kind of add or talk about regarding student accessibility services?
Sure. I think there's two things, TK. One is that the transition from high school to college, as I mentioned before, involves self-advocacy. And this is something that we really want to support students about, particularly with faculty. For students who have educational accommodations, there's a process of notifying faculty about their accommodations. And that can be intimidating for first-year students. And we want to assure students that their confidentiality is well protected. Their educational accommodations gives no indication of their particular diagnosis or diagnoses. And we are committed to maintaining the students' confidentiality at all levels. But it does mean, perhaps for some of you, getting a bit out of your comfort zone, because in high school, if you had an IEP or a 504 plan, all your faculty, you didn't need to interact with faculty in terms of your accommodation. So this is different. But you've got a crew of us behind you to support you in that process. Secondly, we have a chapter of Delta Alpha Pi, which is the International Honor Society for Students with Disabilities. We have more than 60 members. So it's a combination of credits earned and GPA, and a cohort of those students are involved in a peer advisory leadership program. We call it PALS for short. And those are students who are registered with our office in good academic standing who can provide some coaching and support for incoming first-year students. And the PALs go through intensive training, and they are folks who have a range of conditions and disabilities and are high-achieving Worcester State students.
Great. Awesome.
Who can be role models for our incoming first years. And that can be a nice supplement to the staff.
Sure.
We're the grown-ups, and we've got peers who tend to be college-age, traditional college-age students.
Great. Awesome. Well, those were all of our questions. You know, and everyone else knows who's been watching these, that, you know, the way that we kind of wrap things up is that we have this magical question wheel. So you, like everybody else, are going to get the opportunity to spin the wheel, and then I'll ask the question associated with it, and that's how that goes.
Okay, I'm ready.
Go ahead, give it a spin. All right, what do we get?
Study spot.
Study spot.
Okay.
Oh, this is a good one. This one hasn't come up yet.
Okay.
So, where do you think is a really great spot on campus where students can study?
So I have two in mind.
All right.
So one is traditionally the library. So our library has 2 floors, the second and third floor of the LRC. I would recommend the third floor, which is a little quieter. And there's some nooks and crannies.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good study spot for someone who's transitioning from high school. If I was a resident student, I think some of the study lounges are great.
Yeah.
Particularly if you tend to be a little shy. It's a nice environment to maybe meet some of your other your peers. But my understanding is Res Life keep them quiet. So if you don't want to leave the Res Hall, you've got some nice spots to study. And I'm going to add a third one.
All right.
When the weather's nice,
there's
some nice spots on campus just to get some fresh air, sitting by the pond, or any little spot that under the trees.
They have all those Adirondack chairs outside the Wellness Center.
Outside the Wellness Center, the Adirondack chairs, or the little tables with the umbrellas.
Perfect.
So there's plenty of study spots.
There's a lot of places to study.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Fran, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. My name is Thomas Kelly, Director of Retention. This has been Fran Minacchio, Assistant Dean of Student Affairs and Director of Student Accessibility Services. Happy Wednesday, signing off from Worcester State. Bye, everyone.
Bye.